I know everybody is eagerly anticipating the conversation with my next guest, Jack Maxey. Welcome back to the show, Jack. How are you?
Hey, Jason, thanks a lot for having me back. It's a crazy world out there, but we've got to confront some hard realities.
You're looking sharp. I like this new haircut.
You like this? Yeah, I
It
trimmed
looks
up
great.
once
Looks
every six
great.
months.
So, Jack, we wanted to discuss, you and I were having a brief conversation about some of the similarities that were pointed out in this recent lawsuit, P. Diddy. There seems to be an international network of, I guess you'd call them operatives, who have made blackmail kind of the official foreign policy of several countries. Isn't that right?
I think it's always been. I want to be very careful here. Blackmail is normally never used directly, right? Because once it's used directly, it's no longer useful anymore. But yes, it does. And many other of our adversaries are much better at it than we are. The Chinese actually have a term called BYG that roughly translates into women, booze, and money, right? Or money, women, booze, or whatever order you want to put it in. These are the oldest tactics of espionage, right? How better to capture someone than to capture them in their most deviant moments, honey traps. I mean, sparrows. This is old stuff. Uh,
Sparrows. It's interesting that you mentioned sparrows because wasn't that a nickname for Maria Butina?
well, the interesting thing is, yeah, they said Maria Butina was a sparrow, and sparrow, for your listeners out there, is a rough term that defines a foreign espionage asset, usually a woman, sometimes, I guess, a guy. Wink, wink. And this was a tactic they used to debauch people, right? I mean, you've all watched the Russians on TV. This is statecraft 101. I mean, we generally hire people to do these things, but some foreign intelligence agents are quite good at doing it directly. Certainly, the Russians were. The
Hmm.
Chinese sealed deals with these little female assets. It's
Wow.
it's part of their culture, dating even before the communists. Right? How do we know we can trust each other? Because we both are married and we just banged hookers together. Deal closed.
Well, but what you're saying, I mean, it sounds odd to some people, but this is basically, as you say, the oldest trick in the book. A gang, when they initiate somebody, they want to take a cell phone video of you killing someone at the mall or something so that if you ever decide to rat on the gang, they've got dirt on you. So they know you're not going to do
Well,
that.
and this is how the United States Congress and our own, police state controls our elected leaders, right? Let's get real. I mean, anybody can watch the Megyn Kelly video interview of Sammy the Bull Gravano from, I think it was March of 22. I was over in Switzerland. When I saw it, I was like, oh my God, everything makes sense now because he wouldn't listen to me. He didn't want to hear all this stuff back in early
Hey
21.
everyone, welcome to the Megan.
Sorry about that. Didn't mean to
No,
play her there.
put it up.
Sammy the Bull wouldn't listen to you? You tried to speak to Sammy the Bull?
So Megyn Kelly, I think it's up around like 37 minutes or something like that.
Wow.
Megyn Kelly is talking to Sammy the Bull about how Sammy's talking how the five families took a vig on every yard of concrete, that was ever sold in the city. They controlled all the construction trades. And Megan says, wow, that's interesting because Donald Trump ran a lot of buildings, built a lot of buildings back then. And Sammy goes, I never thought about this till just now. He goes, by agreement, we decided to leave Trump alone. We decided it wasn't worth it. And she's like, well, why not? You took all the money from everyone else. And he said, well, because at the time in the 80s, 90s, Trump was surrounded at any given time by 6 to 12 retired or moonlighting FBI agents. So I have to imagine that the FBI knows about every Stormy Daniels. I think this is exactly why Donald Trump came out of Christmas and said, we ought to build that new FBI headquarters right next to the mall. I mean, this we're all being walked into another ambush by compromised people whose personal ethics lead them to betray us. This is how FBI deals with a recalcitrant new congressman. Congressman Jones gets elected, and about a month after he's sworn in, the FBI calls him up and says, "Hey, Congressman Jones, this is Deputy Director, Richardson, we'd like to send over a special agent to give you a security briefing." Now the guy's thinking, wow, I really am important. And the security official comes over and says, "Congressman Jones, we understand that you've been spending a lot of time late night in a bar down at DuPont Circle, and we wanted you to know that we've been monitoring some people on the terrorist list there. So be very careful when you're at Roosters. There may be some bad people in there. Please say hello to Mrs. Jones for us." And then
So it's
all of a
a
sudden, that guy is owned forever,
right.
right? This is how they do it. I've said this for a long, long time, probably over a decade.
Hmm.
The best
So it's
political money that could be spent by the rich Republican or the rich Democrat is to do surveillance on your candidates long before you decide to choose them. Find out exactly what that little dark secret is that they have that allows them to be compromised. Because nobody can explain to me how men and women sworn to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, so help me God, could have just flushed our Fourth Amendment rights down the toilet in the last 48 hours. Why? You know why? Because they walk into the skiff and the guys from the CIA say, "Hey, we're going to tell you something that only a few people on planet Earth know. You're so special. And if anyone knew this, all the American people would die." Right? Why do we need FISA warrants inside the United States? You know why? Because these same feckless people have allowed these so-called terrorists amongst us to come in here both directly through our airports or indiscriminately across our southern border. This is a complete dereliction of duty on every single level. And to watch the clowns, the utter clowns, and like I saw Kennedy yesterday. Well, we're gonna impeach Mayorkas. Really, Kennedy? Because I delivered a copy of Hunter Biden's laptop to the United States Senate Judiciary Committee. I've got the documents proving it. In fact, they later called me back when I started calling them all cowards. And this was July 8th, 21. A official from their committee, you can look him up, Josh Flynn Brown, calls me back in January. "Hey, Jack, can you stop criticizing the senators? We're trying to do the best job we can." I said, "Best job? And this is the first call because I'm criticizing them?" I said, "What have you done? We've got an election. Why aren't you using this to win like they should have done in 20? And then they neglected to do it again in 22. Why?" I'll tell you why. Because every single thing in Hunter's laptop points back to the CIA, every single last thing. And I told Josh Flynn Brown, I hope the call was recorded at the Capitol, or maybe FISA has it. I told him to go F himself. I said the national security of this country cannot wait till you feckless cowards win or lose another election. And guess what they did? They
Nothing.
lost another election, and they've done nothing since. So that's Kennedy. That's Prancing Lady G from South Carolina, the big fan of the Gamecocks, her favorite team.
Hmm.
This is all the rest of them. This is Graham, all compromised, every single one of them. Marco Rubio. I'll tell you a story about Marco Rubio. You want to know how he must be compromised somehow? Because Marco Rubio was briefed by an intelligence community asset of our own, as were several station chiefs in the CIA, about all of Hunter's activities in China, including CEFC, the various Monkey Island, every one of these oil deals by one of our own intelligence assets, one of the bravest Americans I know, literally. Okay. He briefed two station chiefs in Asia, nothing. This is after he made like a Jason Bourne escape from China after they offered him $1 billion to invest as he saw fit for 10 years. And after 10 years, he gives back $1 billion, keeps the profit, and they give him back his passport.
Rubio
This is
was
what we
bribed in
do.
that way,
This
you're
is
saying?
not, I'm telling you, an intelligence asset of our own had this proposition made to him because the Chinese in the fall of 2018 after Patrick Ho and after Patrick Ho was arrested by the FBI and then sent back to China. We're not going to prosecute Patrick Ho. And a one-eyed FBI agent tipped off Hunter so that Ye Jianming, the chairman of CEFC, could flee back to China. Perhaps we could ask, without violating HIPAA, how many one-eyed FBI agents there are. That's right. There's his picture right there. Little Mr. Louie Freeh from Delaware. Hey, Louie, remember all our dinners back in the 90s at the
But he's not just an agent,
I do.
right, Jack? Louie
What's
Freeh
that?
was the director of the FBI just prior
Louie
to
Freeh was
9/11.
director of the FBI. You know how we found out about Louie Freeh? I find a screenshot of a WhatsApp conversation between Gottlieb, who turns out to be a senior partner at Boyce Schiller, a guy named Jay Freeh, who turns out to be Louie Freeh's son, and a guy whose name will come to me turns out to be Louie Freeh's former chief of staff at the FBI. And it's clear from the WhatsApp screenshot that you're trying to obscure, like nobody can know how he put this together, this didn't come from Hunter, blah, blah, blah. Well, it's putting together a corrupt official in Romania named Povescu, who we've heard about, with Louie Freeh, because Povescu is Hunter's partner in a scheme to sell to the Chinese communists the Romanian oil fields at Ploesti. For any of you historians out there, more American airmen died bombing Ploesti than they did Berlin. So 75 years later, the blood-soaked soil of our patriotic grandfathers and our uncles who we never met, the Bidens are trying to sell it to the communist Chinese. Well, the problem is that Povescu has been accused of just basic rank corruption inside Bucharest.
Let me pause here for a second, Jack, because you're giving us a ton of information. So you just mentioned Romania, and it causes me to recall that the very mysterious character Robert Maxwell, who was the father of Ghislaine Maxwell and owned
his wife
the
Romanian, yes. I don't think there's a in there, but they were Romanian.
But he
soon to be, country gentry debauching, the broken families of Great Britain. How do you think that Ghislaine introduced Andrew to Epstein? Because she'd been inviting people like Andrew out to her father's country house throughout the 80s and 90s to do the same kinds of things they were doing at Epstein Island. I mean, you can go do a search on Robert Maxwell, suicide and Mossad, put a collar on it around the time he died, and everyone from the Guardian on down is like, well, people say Mossad killed him. No, apparently he was a suicide who fell in the water off his yacht with 2 skull fractures. See the similarity here? Now you know why Ghislaine's not going to talk, because these people are savage killers and they operate with impunity around the world, whether it's a nuclear scientist in Iran or somebody in America who's getting a little out of line, or certainly a United Kingdom citizen called Robert Maxwell.
But isn't it also true that sometimes these alleged suicides are just a way of taking an intelligence asset off the board? We don't really have any hard evidence that Epstein committed suicide or that he's even dead. The photographs presented in the New York Times don't look anything like Epstein, and there's a lot of reason to be suspicious.
If Epstein was such
Rupert
a great
Murdoch
asset that they did like a raid on Entebbe to free him from a federal jail, and he's living in Tel Aviv in a penthouse.
I didn't say that.
I know, but if he's not dead, where is he?
I don't know.
He's dead. A better question is, how come when they raided Epstein's properties, they found cameras everywhere, but somehow the FBI couldn't find all the recordings? And if you're not running a blackmail operation, why do you have cameras everywhere from the bathroom to every guest bedroom? I mean, this is like simple math. You don't even have to be like a GED in Americans' public schools to figure this crap out. They run a blackmail operation. This is why everybody from every retired prime minister in the last 2 decades came out like, oh, let's bomb Iran. Let's bomb Iran. Because they're all captured. Do you understand? This is why the American government is ready to go to a potential world war on Netanyahu's say-so. And Netanyahu, let's be very clear, was prime minister when the Israelis ran a sophisticated multi-month, I'm talking like 7-month operation against the then ex-vice president, soon a year and a half later to be president, Joe Biden's feckless son, Hunter. There's photographs of these people. And there's a recording of Hunter describing them as Russian assets. But I've discovered that they weren't. They were Israeli assets. When let me just tell the whole story, okay? I get
Well, let me
called.
pause you before you start, because if there's anybody watching who hasn't seen you before, Jack is the guy who first presented the Hunter Biden laptop. If you don't know that, I don't know where you've been, but you should be following Jack on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, at Jack Maxey 1. And he's got a lot of information about this. So you said you've determined that these were Israeli assets. Isn't it true that many Israelis are basically exiles from the former Soviet Union? So there are a lot of Russians in Israel.
Of course, of course. In fact, at some point in Hunter's paranoia, he used to go through women's purses. The Sparrow, a woman named Anna, Hunter took a photograph of her passport. They stole all of his electronic devices in an operation on or about October 3rd, 2018. I have photographic evidence. You have Hunter on video describing these 3 Russian guys and this really hot girl, Anna, who I thought were my friends, who said I overdosed. And when I woke up, the whole house was spotless and all my electronics were missing. Well, they weren't Russians. And if they were Russians, why aren't we having open hearings about how the Russians took all of the president's son's electronics? I'll tell you exactly why we're not having open hearings about it, because they weren't Russians. They were Mossad Israeli intelligence agents operating like they have for decades with absolute impunity and with the cooperation and consent of our own Western governments. Why? Because half of them have already been compromised. Okay? I mean, we're about to write a blank check to Israel. And let me be clear. I love Israel. I want them to survive. But they're following an absolute madman into the abyss, in my opinion. And I have human agency, and I'm allowed to have an opinion about a foreign country.
Sure.
Okay. Fact of the matter is, they pick bar fights all day long, and we got to put down our drinks and play backup every Saturday night. I think, and I think this is true in Ukraine, I think this is true in almost every geography on planet Earth. Kick the American forces out. Kick all the NGOs, which are just another way of saying CIA.
Yeah,
out.
I agree with that.
Okay? Get them out of your countries and then resolve your disputes along lines of mutual interest rather than because of threats from Big Daddy in the United States, who's like, did somebody kick little Israel? Oh my God, Daddy's going to go over there and drive over his country with a tractor.
If I may, Jack, I just want to let people know that I'm not holding you back at all, and I did not want to put you on our sponsor-only platform because I want as many people to see this as possible. So in the event that this video gets struck or removed from YouTube, people will be able to see it on all of the channels that you can sponsor Crowdsource the Truth on. Odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth. crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com and subscribestar.com and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. You said something really interesting, that this is happening with the complicity of U.S. agencies, and I agree with that. I want to ask if you've ever heard of this guy, John Mark Dugan. He was a police officer, a sheriff's deputy with the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office, and he created something called PBSOtalk.com, which was a website where people could anonymously blow the whistle on corruption within the police department. And John has alleged that the detective who was investigating Epstein's mansion there in Palm Beach, he uploaded videos to John's server that were the videos from these hidden cameras in Epstein's mansion. Basically the following day, well, after John published this stuff, he received a thumb drive with the material from an individual who he later learned was Seth Rich. And immediately after receiving that thumb drive, the FBI came and raided John Mark Dugan's house, took all of his computers, and made it quite clear that they wanted to throw him in prison. I believe that Seth Rich was an operation intended to get that material from John Mark Dugan. Have you ever heard of him, Jack?
No, I haven't heard of him, and I really, I've got plenty of conspiracy stories that are actually real. I don't know him. He could be a victim of the deep state, but I mean, let's go back to this Israeli operation against Hunter Biden. I'll tell you exactly. I'll give you the timeline. February, I've just fled Washington, D.C. because the coward Steve Bannon, who got a pardon for architecting We Build the Wall, while Brian Kolfage, a limbless veteran with 2 children, went to jail. Chew on that, MAGA. Refused to cover Hunter's laptop anymore. In fact, he told me that if I mention Hunter and the FBI one more time, he was going to fire me, which is a big joke because Steve Bannon still owes me $140,000. He never paid me a dime. And he could owe me a lot more if I really wanted to go into certain things like why did he get paid $500,000 for the advice I gave the hedge funds in New York? He's a bad man. I think he's compromised. But so in February of 21, I get a phone call from a very prestigious woman with an academic background, great lover of Israel. She says to me, Jack, hey, you might be interested to know. I heard that Mossad, from one of the people in Hannity's office, had tried to shop it to Hannity's producer. I said, wow, because at the time I was like, well, who doesn't have Hunter's stuff? The guy's been drunk and high all over the world with hookers and strangers and everything else. And we really had assumed that most of this stuff was everywhere. And so I thought nothing of it. How can I prove that? I can't talk about that. I'm in a dangerous situation. I can only say things that I can pull a witness or documentation to attach. And so I think nothing of it. And about a month goes by. So it's March, and a friend of my son's, there's 30 hours of Hunter's pornography on there that's easily found. There's really about probably 50. Take every little clip he's got in every little stupid file. And the first time I watched it at 30 times speed because I want to see, does he hit any of these women or what, right? So my friend's son, shout out to him, great kid, says, hey, Mr. Maxey, there's a lot of downtime in those videos. Maybe you should listen to what they're talking about. So I did. I literally grabbed a can of Copenhagen and like a rosary and sat in my bed for 30 hours with headphones on over a weekend listening to the whole thing. And then I hear Hunter discussing with a prostitute, little 19-year-old girl, heroin addict at a Comfort Inn in Naugatuck, Connecticut in February of 2019. Yes, the police did show up. Maybe someone should go get the records. Someone waved them off. Could it have been the Secret Service? I don't know. Anyway, Hunter explains to her after she says, Hunter, why would you smoke cocaine on camera? You could be blackmailed. Your father's
Yeah.
vice president of the United States. He tells the story. I'm already screwed. This hot brunette MILF with brown hair, Anna, this Russian chick. I loved her, man. Her and her 3 friends from Russia stole all my stuff. The same thing I recounted before. So then I'm like, wow, those aren't Russians. Those are Israelis. And the only time I ever mentioned it was at the Jewish and Christian Republicans of Boca Raton's conference. I spoke to about 400 people. Only time I mentioned it because I didn't want to get crosswise with Israel, and I figure we're on the same team. I already watched Joe Biden do a 360 on Iran the day after the inauguration, so I figure, hey, they're going to get him. Now I question why'd they allow him to get elected in the first place, right? Because they could have stopped it all. They had everything in 2018. So, now I'm a little bit like, hey, maybe payback's a bitch. Now, the only time I mentioned that was then, and I'm in Puerto Rico. This is February 10th of 2022. I have photographs. Uh, I'm, without pride, I'm having dinner with 3, 4 Puerto Rican friends. And after dinner, I said, hey, listen, I've got this big joint in my pocket. Why don't we go smoke it, And we'll order dessert. And one girlfriend of mine, it was like, hey, let's smoke it right here. We know the owner, everything. And it's true. I had a different life in Puerto Rico. And I said, no, come on. I'm going to walk down the corner, man. People are eating dinner. This is BS. So I go down with the guy who's with me down to the corner. I'm standing there and we light up this joint. And the whole time I was like, let's walk down the street. People are eating outdoors. He's like, no, no, come on, man. Like, we know everybody here. And that was true. And so,
It's illegal in Puerto Rico to smoke marijuana,
well,
isn't it?
it's not, it's medicinal in Puerto Rico now. Yes, perhaps without a
You
license.
could
And
get in trouble.
I was violating the law. Yes, indeed. So Garrett Ziegler, +1 for you, you little pussy. So you have me standing there. We light it up, and there's a table of four at the very end of the restaurant by the corner. This woman turns around and says, "Hey, Jack." Hey, she goes, "Hey, what are you doing?" I said, "See, Carlos, man, we screwed up." I said, "I'm really sorry." She says, "No, no, I love it." I said, "Really? I figure they're on the end. The wind's going our way." I said, "You want to hit?" She says, "Yes." I walk over. The Israeli Mossad agent takes it in her hand, took a hit as far as I could tell. The next thing I know, I have a seat jammed under my ass, and the butcher from Odessa with his 60-pound arm is laying on my left shoulder, smiling at me like this. And she looks at me holding the joint. This will be a great Netflix series. She says, "Jack, so tell me, why are you in Puerto Rico?" And I'm like,
But
just how,
who's the butcher from Odessa?
well, these are the two Mossad agents. They identified them. Listen to the story. And there are two other people at the table. They were the local Puerto Ricans. They start losing their minds when they start realizing that we're talking about the president's son. And it goes on. So I said, just hiding out. She goes, "That's what we thought." I said, "Well, what are you doing in Puerto Rico?" Remember, I got a 40-pound arm on my left shoulder this whole time with a guy's face this close to me smiling. And my friend who doesn't speak English standing over there going like, what the hell's going on? And she says, "That's what we thought." I said, "What are you doing in Puerto Rico?" She goes, "Jack, we work for Israeli intelligence." I said, "Well, shoot, then you got a better copy of this than I do." Pull this out. Then I pull out my cell phone, which I seem to have misplaced, or I'd show that for you all on TV right now. Because I think, hey, man, Jack, this may be the end for you, brother. So I figured I'm just gonna lay it all out. I said, "Hey, I hope I didn't get anyone in trouble. Never wanted to expose anybody. You guys know who these people are. Anna, she's a pro. Anna was a pro. I don't think she ever gave it up to Hunter. She used to just hire regular hookers, kind of like the way U.S. intelligence does. And uh, show them everything. At this point, the female partner of the two Puerto Ricans, who are, obviously, local friendlies, like in every city on planet Earth, start freaking out because they realize we're talking about Hunter Biden. We're talking about the president. They say, "We didn't sign on to this. You didn't tell us anything about this dinner that was going to be like this." And I'm like, "Hey, if you want me to leave now, that would be a great time, because I'm very uncomfortable, right?" But I'm playing it cool, right? You got to be cool in this life. And she's like, "No, no, I want to see all the pictures." I said, "You guys ran a great op. You stole all the shit." But apparently, over that weekend, about 8 or 10 photos got uploaded to the cloud. Not good. In fact, Anna, the Israeli sparrow, is the same woman who Hunter is pulling the hair on in all those pictures. I've posted multiple photographs. The FBI has all this stuff. They've had it since, remember, December 9th, 2019. The FBI's had all this stuff.
Well, they told
So,
Twitter to suppress it. They organized a whole tabletop exercise with the Aspen Institute. Let me just take you back for a second because you mentioned Steve Bannon, and I know you guys have quite a long history there. I recently saw somebody had this on Twitter, which is, Steve Bannon did some kind of really extensive interview with Jeffrey Epstein, but yet I don't think we've ever, it says Bannon has 15 plus hours, which she's never released. What do you know about that? Or do
listen,
you?
listen, let me tell you what. Bannon is a liar, right? If those were innocent 15 hours, that money hungry fatso would have released this years ago. I think the story is that, yeah, he probably was coaching Epstein on how to behave in his 2020 interview. I was actually in New York when he went to visit Epstein's house that day where he was caught by Page Six going in and out of there. And the story he told us changed 4 times in like 48 hours. So this is not a trustworthy man. I mean, you want to get down into the dirty on Bannon? Why don't you someone seek out Kathy, the real estate agent for Hillary Clinton up in Chautauqua, and ask her about the meeting that she had down with Steve at his townhouse in March of 2020, where he was going to tell her how he had figured out a path to victory for Hillary Clinton in 2020 while he's running a 3 hour a day Mr. MAGA show. You know, my impression was that he was going to take the job if it worked out. Now, I didn't know about this till 3 weeks ago, but now I know. Okay. This is a dirtbag. This is a guy who begged like a little skimpering girl for a pardon from a big other windbag and got it. Did he leave his best friend, Andy Badalato, to go to jail? Yes. Did he leave a triple amputee with 2 small children to go to jail? Yes. It's not a good person. I mean, just everybody has to stop. This guy is a clown. He's going to fire me if I mention Hunter again. And then when I got to Palm Beach, Donald Trump didn't want to have me brief him on it in February either. Ask Joanna. I called her. I'm not,
Why
I
would
don't,
Trump not want a briefing on the Hunter Biden laptop?
you know why?
They just didn't
Because
trust you.
it
He had
all
poisoned the
leads
water.
back to the people who have him compromised from FBI on down. None of these people want to go after the real targets. Who do you think was running the biolabs in Ukraine? That was the CIA. Okay. The New York Times just revealed that there were 13 CIA bases. Where do you think we tortured those people from the war on terror? I mean, why do you think it's so important that we cover up everything Ukraine, right? How does Kofor Black, the former head of the bin Laden task force till 9/11, and then he gets transferred to the State Department, and Bush makes him ambassador for weapons of mass destruction. Just open up his Wikipedia page. You can see all this. And Kofor Black is a long-term CIA State Department person, and he's the WMD expert in the country with all the Ukraine biolabs. He also sits on the board of Burisma with Hunter and has sat there since 2016. He's listed as a board member to this very day in the Cyprus documents for the company. Why has not the ambassador for WMDs and the former head of the Osama bin Laden task force been brought before Comer's committee to tell us all about why Hunter was so qualified to sit on the board of that oil and gas company? Then he can also tell us what in his background made him an $82,000 a month man on the Burisma oil and gas company. And now you start to go back to like, so the Zolchevsky, the guy who Biden withheld the $1 billion for to get the prosecutor fired, employs not just Hunter Biden, employs Devin Archer, the little bestie of John Kerry's son, roommate from Yale, right? And they employ Kofor Black, the ambassador at large for weapons of mass destruction. You know how we know about the biolabs in Ukraine? Because the very first thing Hunter and Devin did as those famous biotech uh, uh, investment bankers, when they were tasked with raising a private placement for Metabiota, they went to the oligarchs at Burisma. And we know about this because Hunter doesn't say anything about the meeting, but Vadim at Burisma memorializes the meeting in a return email saying, hey, do I have this right? Black and Veatch is going to be running all these biolabs. It's super top secret. The money's always going to be there. It's going to be done through a fake contract through DOD and the Department of Agriculture. Yeah, that's right. That's right. And then you have an executive from Metabiota pipe in on Hunter's computer if I would break the law, which I wouldn't. we'd be able to see these attachments. The FBI can see these attachments. You know, a woman from Metabiota
Why
sends
would
back.
that be breaking the law?
Of course, that's why I wouldn't do it. You think if I
Why would
broke
it
one
be?
law, they wouldn't have
Isn't
me in a concrete box right now?
But wait a minute, why is it breaking the law? Isn't this stuff in the public domain?
No, because you'd have to crack into his cloud or somewhere else where you
Ah,
could have
oh, he's
access
got a
to it.
password on it, you mean? So even if you
Right.
have it in
Yeah.
your possession, you
I
can't
mean,
look at
we
it.
found passwords and broke into a lot of stuff, but I didn't do things that would require hacking. Like, for example, the American people should know Hunter has a conversation with his father in February where Hunter's lamenting the fact that he's been accused of sexually abusing his niece, masturbating in front of her, smoking crack in front of her, watching pornography with her, and
Oof.
sexting her at night. These are the accusations of the young girl's mother, Hunter's sister-in-law, who he turned into a crackhead while she was grieving her dead husband. Hunter is an evil demon. I mean, literally like a dog that needs to be put down by Cary Grant in The Street. Okay. The whole family are utter deviants. You think Hunter learned to abuse little girls, from the internet? Probably learned it because his daddy was taking showers with his sister. This whole family is utterly debauched. I mean,
Yeah.
think about this. Beau Biden, and this is on the computer if anyone cares to look at it. They come up for his reelection as attorney general, and he's got to have some new pizzazz. And the new pizzazz is the protection of little girls and little boys. So he comes out as the attorney general for children, and he creates a child protective unit at the Delaware State Police. He passes laws that make any knowledge of child abuse a felony, a first degree felony for people like doctors of education, like Jill, or a first degree felony for licensed social workers like Ashley, and a third degree felony for anybody else. Hunter has a therapist who, in writing, he says quits and throws up when she hears about this. Did she go to anyone? Well, guess what? I think it was on October like 13th, maybe 12th of 2020. The very first thing Rudy and Bernie Carrick did was deliver a copy with evidence, with the printouts of this declarations of him abusing his niece. This is why Hunter flees to California, because he's not allowed to be alone around any children by command of his own father.
Hmm. It's
And
weird that
so
they would do that.
Rudy Giuliani and Bernie Carrick, gentlemen that they are, God bless them both, delivered everything to the Delaware State Police Child Protective Unit. Did they follow the statute and go do a welfare check on the child? No. You know what they did? We didn't find this out till a year later. They walked across the street and gave everything to the FBI and washed their hands of it. We know that the FBI doesn't protect little children. Just ask our fantastic, beautiful, brave Olympic gymnasts.
Yeah, they're
They were
suing the
abused for
FBI.
5 years. And anybody can look this up. Go look summer of 2022. The guy who was tasked with being the head of child pornography and child, trafficking for the FBI in the Southeast is arrested by sheriffs in Louisiana for just what he's supposed to be in charge of. You don't see that kind of stuff from the FBI in the headlines. I mean, hell, the FBI just every day they tell lies. They can't even tell their own history straight. It's a broken organization, right? And when I found out the stuff about Louie Freeh, they get Louie Freeh to protect that guy Poviescu. Louie Freeh travels to Ukraine 3 times that we know. When we sent a stringer in Bucharest to ask all the participants over there if they'd go on the record, none of them would, but they all said that the U.S. Embassy got involved, that they were terrified, that they felt threatened, right, to get this guy off. This is Louie Freeh going over there doing this. Louie Freeh through Buckman, that's the guy. Gottlieb, Buckman, and Jay Freeh were the names on that first uh, screenshot of the WhatsApp conversation. It turns out someone calls me up. They're like, "Hey, bro, Buckman used to be Louie Freeh's chief of staff at the FBI." I'm like, very interesting. He's still the bag man for the one-eyed crook, right? People, we need to wake up. Literally wake up. You know who the people were at the time when he started to go over to Romania who were in the firm of Louie Freeh? Is it
Sporkin, there was a judge in there.
Judge
Right.
Sullivan, when I showed these documents to one of his classmates at West Point, old SOG guy, literally teared up because he had so much respect for the guy who had been the head of the honor court at the U.S. Military Academy and couldn't believe that he'd become such a scumbag. The only conversation they have about whether or not they should represent Poviescu, it's not about his guilt. It's not about, hey, is this guy a real mobster, like they say? No, it's how can we get paid? Louie Freeh says, oh, my people checked him out. He's got $1 billion in real estate in Bucharest alone. We're going to get paid. And then through Buckman later, Hunter's like, hey, man, what's happening with my friend? You know, because he can't talk to Louie Freeh because they have to pretend Hunter wasn't part of the connection. Although Louie Freeh does kick back a little bonus to Hunter afterwards. He says, hey, man, what's going on with Poviescu? And Buckman says, hey, Hunter, listen, not only do we have all of the former FBI assets of Eastern Europe on our list, we're going to find something on this female prosecutor. We'll ruin her. But not only that, we have the FBI agents working in the Bucharest Anti-Corruption Academy. And more than that, the students work for us too. So Romania, you're owned by U.S. intelligence. Kick them all out. This would be my message for every country on planet Earth. Okay? Because we need to fix things at home before we can ever hope to fix anything in your country. We break things. Look at San Francisco. So he also said we have
Hang on a second, Jack. Let's talk about this. Bucharest Romanian Anti-Corruption Society sounds a lot like NABU, which was pretty clearly created by the FBI.
Yeah, FBI has an anti-corruption academy, or did at the time, outside of Bucharest. But then what's worse, they say, hey, listen, we also have the FBI security apparatus inside the embassy. They'll do the work too. I tell this to a good dear friend of mine, Sam Faddis. You know, I don't think he'd have any problem saying it. Sam actually was the first guy I called. Sam came down. He was like, this is 100% real, brother. This is on the 14th of October. And 5 days later, the former directors of the CIA say it's fake through Politico, owned by Axel Springer, you know, funded by CIA. You know, people need to wake up, literally wake up. I mean, this whole thing is a house of mirrors. They pick the winners and losers. They brag about overturning elections in every country on planet Earth. And you sit back and think, oh, it was the mail-ins. Damn right it was. From Langley. We need to corral these demons. Okay, you want to go into how they funded
Not literally. Nobody should take any action based on anything said here today. Jack is expressing his opinion.
I said
I just want to
corral.
make sure. The FBI is trying to knock me out as well, Jack. Let me pause you for a second because you've said so many incredible things. So with regard to Metabiota, you know, John Cullen, a guy who I do a regular show with every Friday, people can see it on Odyssey and Substack and all the sponsorship channels. He actually went back in the Wayback Machine on the U.S. Embassy in Ukraine website and found contracts with Black & Veatch, documents about Metabiota getting involved in the labs, something quite interesting that I've never heard any explanation of whatsoever. This is a story here from 2005 where Barack Obama, while still a senator, traveled with then Senator Dick Lugar to various places in and around Russia, and they were detained. A delegation led by U.S. senators was detained at a Russian airport. We've never heard an explanation as to why. Do you know anything about this incident?
I don't know anything about it, but all those biolabs and the control of biological and virological research went to CIA after a 2005 WMD report promulgated by the Bush White House. I mean, it's very easy to tell what happened. It's like why we got Blackwater. It's like why we lost all of our best junior officers and senior NCOs and special forces, because these scumbags figured out a way to profit from war directly by creating private armies and contractors. So in 2005 WMD study, the results were like for biological and virological weapons, we're going to subsidize the education of graduate students in these subjects. We're going to give them like a $50,000 stipend forever to be on standby to hook up with a fast teams from special forces who are also trained up in these things will send you to Timbuktu. You'll take samples covertly, you'll come back, and we'll figure out how to respond. Well, they're like, well, crap, that's how we're going to make money that way. So they created a company called Metabiota to be the early warning sign for emerging viruses. Metabiota gets sent to Sierra Leone in 2014 to manage the Ebola crisis there. They absolutely fail. Metabiota is accused of manslaughter. Metabiota is accused of utter and complete failure inside their management of this virus, right? 2 years later, they're managing the CIA biolabs in Ukraine. You got to ask why. And they're going to the great investment bankers, Hunter and Devon, to get it done. And Hunter and Devon are told that they've got a buyer for Metabiota, so everyone who invests now is going to make a 5x. Well, guess who the buyer turns out to be? In-Q-Tel, the CIA not-for-profit venture capital incubator for technologies that impact intelligence, impact defense. Damn right they made a 5x. So it's not only have they committed like crimes against humanity by later having the same crew in Wuhan, they committed financial fraud. So the damn SEC should be involved. This is the same thing inside Hunter's private equity fund, Bohai Harvest. Hunter, Devon Archer, and the other partner, each of whom own 10%. Jim Whitey Bulger, friend of Carrie's from Boston, daddy's his bestie, right? You'll find Metabiota in there.
I have no
Unless
doubt.
they just sold it since I took screenshots last July. No, Biota.
I have no doubt that we'll find it. I mean, we know that all
So,
this stuff happened. There it is.
so I mean, in the private equity fund, for example, Hunter and the other guys who are members of the GP but still limited partners are given rolling loans every year to look like they have skin in the game. This is utterly illegal if not disclosed to all the other limited partnerships. There's documents describing this. There's documents describing how we, oh, go look up Metabiota, Swiss, Munich Re, In-Q-Tel, 2017. You'll find something very interesting there. INQTEL, Metabiota, Munich Re, 2017, hit news. So all of Wall Street's invested in Hunter's low private equity fund. You're darn right they don't want to investigate it because the whole thing is a fraud. But what are you going to do? Like take the clients at Goldman Sachs out? Yeah, what was Metabiota hooking up with Munich Re for in 2017 to develop insurance policies for this new category called pandemic insurance? Holy cow. And then like 2 years later, we have a pandemic.
Wow.
I mean, who would have thought?
Jack, have you ever heard of this scientist named Yoshihiro Kawaoka? He's involved in gain of function research at the University of Wisconsin, and he received a letter. There's that famous moratorium on gain of function. Dr. Kawaoka specifically received a letter that exempted his research from that. He was specifically trying to create a more pathogenic version of the H7N9 avian influenza. And it seems that he succeeded because we've been having huge avian.
Well, I mean, one of the most frightening things that happened with the origin story of the Wuhan was that when Dr. Li Yang came and said, look, you can tell that this was inserted, and there were American scientists who were also questioning whether it was inserted or not, but they had some questions because it was done so well, and they had an assumption that the Chinese did not have access to our newest highly classified splicing technology. And CIA, using that as a rationale, convinced multiple scientists inside America that, see, there's no way they could have done it. They don't have our latest stuff. And then it turns out, yeah, they did have our latest stuff. And think about this. What organization on planet Earth, and it's going to be a little larger. I'd say Five Eyes and probably the BND in Germany are involved. What organization on planet Earth has both the capacity, the expertise, and the historic know-how to run a global PSYOP campaign, averting attention from treatments, from questions about the vaccine, from lethality, from origin, a giant smokescreen of which we now find out almost none of it was true. I am told that Dr. Fauci began cooperating with CIA all the way back 10, 15 years ago when they took over this stuff. And it was Fauci himself who not only was deciding on the science that was being looked at in some of these places from Ukraine to Wuhan, but he was also choosing the scientists who got the green light. And for example, there was another guy who was involved in the research on these coronaviruses in Wuhan. You can look this up. His name's George Gao, Gao. And you can probably put in George Gao, Metabiota, Wuhan, and Corona.
But isn't he
Put
the
his
head of the CDC of China?
Yes. Yes, he's married to a woman named Xiaoying Zhang, spelled Zhang. She is, let's see, does it list his spouse on the side? No,
Doesn't seem
no,
to.
no, doesn't seem to. Well, I've got witnesses from Oxford. I've got photographs. I've got everything. Xiaoying Zhang, his wife, there's one of the first things where we see anything about Metabiota is a message from Eric Schwerin, the guy who should be in jail for all the criminal activity in their broker dealer who somehow has not been punished. Sends an email to Hunter and Devin saying, "Hey, Hunter, we definitely should hook up Xiaoying's husband with the guys at Metabiota. I mean, he runs the CDC." I'm like, Xiaoying's husband, who's this? Well, I finally figure out with the help of, yes, people on our own team. She's Xiaoying Zhang. She is a daughter of the Zhang family in Shanghai. They run something for you little intelligence buffs called variously the Shanghai Click or the Oil Click. They're peer family to Z. Her grandfather was the guy, or great uncle maybe was, or maybe even father. I'm not sure. It's hard. Chinese families, you can have one patriarch who could be the brother, the uncle, the grandfather. There's a leader. The guy who started the family was the first general in Chiang Kai-shek's army to not only come over to the communists, but bring his army with him. Very powerful. This is the family that hosted Joe Biden on his first trip to China in 1989. Xiaoying has been the handholder for the Biden family ever since. She's met them every time they've come to China. She was the office manager at a consultancy in Beijing named Radix, Radix. You can go look at Jeff Cooper and Hunter's company called Eudora Global in the Wayback Machine. You'll see them bragging about owning this consultancy. It disappears along with the fact that Hunter was a founder. She's a real person. I have photographs of her. I have witnesses willing to testify who she is, willing to testify she was Hunter's secretary, willing to testify that she was the family translator and hand holder, right? Well, that's how our guys get hooked up with the Chinese CDC, is through the Biden family connection with a CCP handler who's been, compromising them for what now, 35 years?
So, Jack, what
This
do
is
you
how
see?
our
I mean, based
adversaries
on
play the long game. This is how
everything
they play
you're,
the long game. It's no different than Epstein. Epstein ran for 20 years until he ran out, right?
yeah,
You
yeah.
know what I'm saying? It's like the U.S. is like, well, Gary retires next year, so Susie's going to step in and meet your new case officer, Bob. I mean, I know people who are like, I told my guys, like, just get lost. I don't trust the next guy because the CIA is broken. It's utterly broken. And it's essentially now a criminal organization.
It has been
And
for a long time, hasn't it? I mean, based on
it
everything you're
has been
telling
for a
us,
long time, but under the Bush administration, they privatized all of their functions. So people are getting absolutely rich. Tell your friend who's looking up all the stuff at the Ukraine embassy to go see a video from January 10th of 20 where these clowns come out and try to explain to the Ukrainian people that those biolabs are really just for horses and dogs and kitty cats.
Was that
You won't
this
find it, by the way, but
conversation
I've
with
posted it many times.
Victoria
And
Nuland? Is that
one
this
of the
one?
guys, hang on, no, this is about the biolabs. You won't find it easily. I'll send it to you. You can clip it in if you want. And I've got it on my, if you follow my Twitter, I think I posted it just like 3 or 4 days ago for the 50th time. One
Ah.
of the clowns who's in the video as an expert. I'm like, man, I feel like I've seen that guy somewhere before, maybe in DC or whatever. Do a little search on him, and I find his. They actually name his company on the bottom. I search that, pops up, and this guy is. Yeah, keep going. You'll find it. Oh, there's the evidence form from Sheriff Ivey and the Florida Bureau of Investigation when I handed over all of Hunter's laptops, including the recovered on July 22nd of 22. I don't know. Like it could be. I post a lot. You're probably only 2 days in. Um,
Well, people should
but
definitely
one of the
follow
guys
Jack on
who's,
Twitter.
who's on there as an expert, I look him up, and then it turns out it's like he's not an expert. He's a paid narrative expert with 20 years experience at the DoD, who now works at a private consulting corporation, minority owned, because two females are the majority owners, and they also are spooks. This is how the game works. How much you get paid to make that clown fake video? And why is there a video coming out on January 10th of 2020 trying to reassure all the Ukrainians that those biolabs are super safe? Why? You know why? Because okay, here are the Russians. If you look there they are. Those are
Yeah,
the
in the
Russian
car.
agents right there. That's Hunter recounting the whole thing. That's Anna. Um, yeah, if you go through there, you can see Anna's passport. So, does the FBI have facial recognition software? Could Jamie Comer just ask maybe who are these people? Could we ask Mayorkas at DHS? Did this passport ever cross over the border? Right here, you can see the time, the date. I took that screenshot, so I picked up the date that it actually happened. That's October 1. Well, it's like a 2 or 3 day weekend. This is the first day. Hunter's just meeting the brothers from Russia.
But Jack, these
Right?
people look like they're in college on their way to a strip club or something. This
Or
is the
they look
crew
like
that's
a
taking
couple of
down the
IDF
United
guys who went
States?
to a hipster store. Trust me, brother. Mossad didn't come and want to see all the photographs because I'm BSing,
I'm not
right?
saying that. I'm just saying it's pathetic that we're so exposed that a crew of four 25-year-olds can,
Well,
pen.
Anna's probably in her mid-30s, and Anna had been working Hunter
Whoa.
since probably May. So this weekend was set up. Hunter had a rented house, big party house, lots of strippers, hookers, blow. He claims that he was overdosed, which I think is impossible. If I had to guess, I could probably give you the chemicals they use, but he recovers immediately and finds out that, hey man, Hunter, you overdosed. Man, we're so glad you're okay. They leave, and Hunter discovers that the house is like wiped absolutely clean, and his electronic devices are stolen.
But don't the
There's a video of
FBI
it. That's a
and
video of him recounting it. And there's plenty of
yeah.
other pictures. I mean, if you want to see Anna's
Well,
hanging
I
out
don't
with
want to get
somebody
kicked off of
junked
YouTube.
out.
People can definitely follow you on Twitter at JackMaxey1. But the thing is, shouldn't the Secret Service and the FBI, I mean, we're here thinking we're the most powerful
So,
nation in the world. Shouldn't they be able to find out about this and stop it?
of course they should, but the thing is, then you have to have the truth, and nobody wants to confront the truth that the entire country and the elite of this country have been blackmailed by Israeli intelligence for decades, both sides of the aisle. That's why there's no difference, no matter who's in power, right? And I feel like I'm being super critical of Israel, and I really don't want to be. What I'm really critical of is the leadership of Israel, just like I'm often critical of the leadership inside America. I think Netanyahu's a madman. And let's face it, you don't run your intelligence service doing an op on the son of a vice president who's later going to become president without the consent of Prime Minister Netanyahu. Now, something for all the Israeli fans, especially all you MAGA clowns, you should think about is That means that Netanyahu could have kept Joe Biden from being elected president. Why didn't he? Why? You know why? Because Israel doesn't give a shit about America. Israel properly gives a great care about Israel. And they don't care what kind of chaos their decisions make for us, because their decisions are made on their own behalf.
Let me ask you
Right?
this, Jack, because I think it is a very complicated deception, and I'm not trying to defend Israel. My primary concern is with the United States of America, but it seems to me that the United States, I mean, Israel came around the United States had lots of hoaxes going on before Israel was around, and even the way Israel was created might be a hoax. It seems to me the FBI have developed a lot of Russian Jewish operatives, including this guy, Felix Sater. And it would be easy.
Let's just think about the relationship. I don't know about Felix. Let's go to the big brand names, right? Jonathan Pollard. Jonathan Pollard got dozens of people killed. Jonathan Pollard revealed our nuclear navy's codes to the Israelis, who later sold them to the Russians, right? That's not an ally. You know, go look up the U.S.S. Liberty that they, accidentally sank.
But isn't it? Let's talk about that a second, because I
not
hear.
an
Let me
ally.
just
This is
address
I'm
that,
not-
because
look,
I hear
just
a
stop,
lot of
just
people.
stop.
Let me
Let's
just
be
address
rational
that for a second, Jack. I want to ask you something about the U.S.S. Liberty, because it's always seemed very strange to me in 1960, whatever, that such a small country that was so economically and politically and militarily dependent on the United States would do something like that, and the United States would just accept it. It seems much more likely that Lyndon Johnson ordered the Israelis to do that, to make it look like Israel did it, to create the war in the Middle East that the United States has been driving towards in the 50 years since then, and that we now seem to be on the verge of having.
Just stop for a second. You've had your little conspiracy theory. Now explain to me.
That was 2 seconds of me talking after you going on for an hour. Let's be polite with each other, Jack.
Well, I am the guest, aren't I?
Yes, but I'm here to ask you questions, not to give you a platform to spew or to insult me. So let's talk about the feasibility of Israel doing this on their own. It doesn't seem possible to me, and we know that Lyndon Johnson was at the heart of many hoaxes, including the assassination of John F. Kennedy. So just as he wants everybody to think that Lee Harvey Oswald did that.
Blame that on the Israelis too. If you want to blame it on the Israelis, then you're worse.
I'm blaming it on Lyndon Johnson. You're blaming everything on the Israelis.
The Israelis executed it. Lyndon's just the guy giving the orders. The Israelis did.
What evidence is it that the Israelis executed the assassination of JFK? What evidence proves that?
Well, I'm not saying if you're going to dig down these holes that a U.S. president ordered the Israelis to murder 100 U.S. sailors and destroy an American listening ship in the Mediterranean, then, Lyndon was just an accomplice. They're the murderers.
Seems ridiculous to me.
Whether they did it on our orders or not, you're trying to absolve them.
No, I'm not trying to absolve them. I'm trying to understand the situation. Don't turn this on me, Jack. Jack, listen, the last time you came on the show, you left because we had a disagreement. And it's fine for us to disagree, but we know that Lyndon Johnson is very involved in all kinds of hoaxes that result in lots of deaths, like the Gulf of Tonkin. Just let me get into this here, okay? Did Lyndon Johnson not participate in a hoax that Robert McNamara later said we knew was a hoax with the Gulf of Tonkin? Did he or didn't he?
Yes, he did.
Didn't that result in hundreds of thousands of people dying? Why do we presume it would be beyond something he would do?
Did Lyndon Johnson call the North Vietnamese leader and tell them to fire on the American ships so that we could open up a larger war in the South?
That's a detail.
That would be the same logic, wouldn't it?
No, I'm just saying that the guy is into staging false flags to create wars for the same reason you're talking about. Lyndon Johnson was very supported by Bell Helicopter.
U.S.S. Liberty? Can I have 3 minutes? Can I have a moment to explain my analysis of the U.S.S. Liberty?
Yeah.
Okay, the U.S.S. Liberty was a listening ship. It was monitoring air traffic, all of the comms in the Middle East. It was able to track all the aircraft for hundreds and hundreds of miles, and they were giving this information back to the American fleet in open source, right? They're just like, hey, man, They were equivalent of a surface AWAC at the time operating in the clear. So in order to take out the air bases in Egypt, they had to take out the ship first so that the Egyptians wouldn't get a heads up that they were coming there next. This is just basic tactics. But if you want to think that, President Johnson called up the Israeli premier and said, please take out one of our naval ships.
I didn't say that. And that's a ridiculous way to pose what I said. You're trying to make me look ridiculous. Robert McNamara admitted that the supposed August 4th attack, which Washington authorized as retaliation, never happened. I'm talking about the history of Lyndon Johnson planning and executing false flags that resulted in the deaths of hundreds and even hundreds of thousands of people.
We disagree on the U.S.S liberty. Can we agree that Jonathan Pollard killed many people and destroyed U.S. Navy intelligence for the behalf of the Israelis?
I need to study much more about Jonathan Pollard to understand that situation. I don't know everything about everything. You brought up the U.S.S. Liberty. It's always seemed like something that can't be easily explained by the story that is in the mainstream. I think there's
Pollard went to jail, so it's pretty easily explained. He was convicted.
So everybody who gets convicted and goes to jail is definitely guilty of what they said they did. I don't know enough about the situation to even discuss it, so I don't want to get into a discussion about that.
Who's being defensive, and I'm bringing up two.
I'm not being defensive, Jack. I'm just telling you that it seems to me like Lyndon Johnson.
Certain topics and unknowledgeable in others.
What?
I said you just seem to be adept in certain subjects concerning Israel.
Well, you didn't know anything about John Mark Dugan. You didn't know anything about the video footage that he claimed to have of Jeffrey Epstein. Jack, I don't like it when you get like this, and I'm not going to continue the interview if you're going to be this way. It's all right for us to disagree, and in fact, I think it even helps us get to...
Continue the interview. You go down these rabbit holes. You want me to tell you what I know? I can tell you.
I want to have a discussion with you, and I want to ask you certain questions. All right. You know what, Jack? I think we might be at the end of the line for this interview here. I don't like it when we get to these arguments. You seem to not like it when I disagree with you.
I wasn't called to be talked about.
I just called you. We were going to have a discussion about this. That means we're going to talk back and forth. Okay, a conspiracy theory. You know what, Jack? Thanks for coming on the show. People who want to follow Jack can do that on Twitter. He's there at JackMaxey1. And I encourage people to follow Jack, look at the information he has there, interact with him, and come to your own conclusions. People can sponsor this show by going to odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, and subscribestar.com and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Jack, I don't mind arguing with you, but we'll have another conversation another time. Thanks for coming on the show today. And have a great day.
That's bullshit. You do like arguing, and you're a coward. Thank you for having me.
Okay, that might be the last time you come on then. Have a nice day, Jack.
No big skin off my back with a conspiracy theorist talking BS all time. Run it. Run it. Run it.
Run what?
Let's see what kind of courage you have.
Run what?
Run this interview.
It's going out live, Jack, and you're insulting me, so it's going to be the last time you're on the show.
A guy who knows everything about the U.S.S. Liberty and nothing about Pollard. I think this
didn't say I know everything about the U.S.S. Liberty. I was asking a fundamental question about Lyndon Johnson, who I know a lot about. I don't know as much about Jonathan Pollard as I should, I admit, but I just haven't studied the guy. Listen, this has gotten very combative and unpleasant. You've been insulting me, so it's the end of the interview. Have a nice day, Jack. Thanks for watching. What?
You've been insulting my intelligence.
I don't think that's correct, but you're free to have your own opinion.
Life's a two-way range, tough guy.
Tough guy. I'm being polite with you.
Goodbye, America. This is why we fail. We have people like this making decisions.
What decisions do I make? I made the bad decision of having you on the show.
Right before their eyes. Yes, yes. Lyndon Johnson ordered the destruction of the U.S.S. Liberty, people. And Pollard, how do we know he was guilty? Cut me a break.
I didn't say, how do we know he was guilty? I just said there's a lot of you think Peter Navarro is guilty. Isn't he going to jail?
Yes, he was. He was. Did he show up for the hearing? No. He's taking his medicine. Okay? This is facts. Life's a two-way range. You know, you
Is
want to be
Donald Trump guilty if he goes to jail for all this
like
stuff?
Trump, he wants to go to his kid's graduation. Good. Take the consequences. It's like if I'm a soldier and I've got to deploy to the Middle East to rescue Israel from Iran, and I got
I
to go to my
agree we
son's
shouldn't be
graduation,
fighting wars
do I
for
get
other
to
countries.
go? No, I don't. Same goes
Yeah.
for Ukraine. Enough of this horse shit. It's time for America to take care of America. We're watching our entire country
Jack, you've
fall
called me a
apart before us.
coward. You've insulted me in all kinds of ways. I really don't appreciate it. I was trying to overlook the fact
listen,
that
if
you
I'm
were
insulting you, then you are
promoting. You
literally
call me a coward to my
okay?
face. How is it not insulting me? I'm turning you off, Jack. Have a nice day. I don't know if we're going to get past this and have you back on the show, but thanks for watching, everybody. Sponsor the show on odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth. Jack is done. Have a nice day, Jack. Bye-bye. And thanks